And everybody, Rob Ellis Show, A2D Radio. Man, we're up to episode 11 already. Time flies when you're having fun, that's for sure. If this is your first time tuning in, first of all, you're in for a treat because we have Tom McCarthy. But secondly, just to let you know kind of what we do here each and every week. I love to get sort of the backstory, to walk through the journey of our guests to how they got to the point where they are. You know, we kind of know them in their present day form, but it's not something that happens overnight. You don't snap your fingers and, wave your magic wand and all of a sudden, you're at your career destination. Tom McCarthy is a great example of that. And without further ado, we are going to bring him on right now. Phillies television voice from NBC Sports Philadelphia, but also does a myriad of other things. Tom McCarthy. Tom, how are you, my friend?
Hey, Rob, I'm doing great, buddy. How you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm very excited to talk with you because I think you're a great example of perseverance, stick-to-itiveness, kind of to climb that career ladder, if you will. So let's start with a couple things here, Tom. Guy who grew up in New Jersey, and I guess my first question, because I know you did a lot of writing too, once you got out of college, was the career path for you always to go the broadcasting end, or was the print side of it really alluring and maybe it was going to go that way? How did you kind of, veer into where you're at now?
Rob, it's a great question. I actually went to school to be a doctor. I was a biology major at the College of New Jersey. Now,
Really?
I say that, but in reality, I applied to, I think it was 6 or 7 schools. I can't remember. And I was a different major at all schools because I had no idea what I wanted to do.
Right.
I wanted to be a baseball player. That was my thought. And in my mind, I was going to be a baseball player. So my mom and dad didn't go to college. My dad went to night school at Seton Hall for a few classes, but he was more of a blue collar guy, worked for AT&T. My mom was a homemaker. And, college was not a lofty goal for us, but it was a goal that not many people in my family had exceeded. So my brother was at Trenton State College, now the College of New Jersey, and he was playing baseball, and he was a really good pitcher and hurt his rotator cuff. But long story short, I didn't really know what the process was to go play college baseball. I went to these different camps. I was rated one of the top 50 prospects in the state of New Jersey, but who the heck knows what that meant at that time. And I was also recruited to play college basketball too. So I didn't really know what I wanted to do. So I was a different major. So I was journalism at Indiana. I was business at Rutgers. I was hotel and restaurant management at North Carolina Wesleyan, which would have been hysterical.
I never knew any of this. Okay.
Yeah. I was biology at the College of New Jersey. And there were 3 other schools that I can't remember what they were. Montclair must have been one of them because it was where one of my camps were. And I think there I was just I was undeclared for the first part of my year. So long story short, I went to the College of New Jersey. My brother was there. That's why I went. Lived on the same floor as he did, which was a total coincidence.
Right.
Was in the same fraternity that he was, which wasn't really a coincidence. And was a biology major. And I was a really, 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 really bad biology major.
Wow.
Yeah, I was that for about a little over 2 years before I transferred into communications, much to the delight of everybody in the biology department. But I went there to play baseball. I got cut after a week. I was going to transfer to Montclair, decided not to, then decided not to play basketball. And within about 2 or 3 months, I started writing for a weekly paper called the Hopewell Valley News. One of the guys that went to Trenton State College, his name was Tom Campisi. He was the editor. It was a weekly paper. It was a small paper. Needed somebody. I said, I'll do it. And that's how I got into writing. The first story I wrote, I had no idea what to do. I picked up the paper next to me and I read how the person wrote the story. Right. And I basically structured my story the same way and just changed the words and everything like that. So that's how I started writing. Okay.
That's fast. I want to go back to your upbringing. So in Brick, New Jersey, correct? And was your dad or mom, for that matter, by the way, were they big sports fans? Was that something that was ingrained in you guys from Jump Street?
From Jump Street. My dad was a season ticket holder for the Giants and the Jets.
Okay.
So they would alternate weeks going because his brother was a Giants fan. He was a Jets fan. My dad was a really big New York Giants baseball fan when he was growing up. And my uncle Sonny was a Dodger fan. So they kind of went back and forth with that. And a Yankee fan. I don't know how you could be both, but he was both. And my grandparents were huge sports fans. They were big Mets fans. And my house, after obviously the Dodgers left, I wasn't born. The Giants left. I wasn't born, but my
50s,
house became Yankee fans. My older brother, my mom and dad, they loved Phil Rizzuto. Because of that, I followed my grandparents, and I was a Mets fan. So, Mets fan, baseball-wise, that was really the only sport that I rooted for. I was a Sixers fan, and it's only because of the '83 World Championship. But we grew up in the center of the state, which meant we can go to all three stadiums, and we went a lot. I mean, we went to a lot of games, and it was pretty sweet. My dad gave up his Giants-Jets season tickets when we were younger, when the Meadowlands was put together, because he wanted to spend more time with his family. And we thought it was the dumbest thing in the world.
We could all spend time at the Meadowlands, Dad. Come
exactly.
on.
Yeah. He was 10 rows up on the 40-yard line at the Meadowlands, and he gave up the tickets. So we put our names on the list. My brother and I, when I was 14, he was 16. And we actually got called when MetLife Stadium opened for both of them, which was kind of funny. And
it took that long, though.
It took that long. Yeah, it took that long. But it was a great place to grow up because sports was a really big part of it. We were all active in everything. Even though I'm not built for it, we played every sport. We played soccer, played baseball, played basketball. I played football for 1 year, which is weird since I'm, almost 6'3" and I'm
good size.
250 pounds. I wasn't this big when I was younger. I didn't grow until, I was going to college, and I was not small. I mean, for my high school, a Brick was a really good football program. So I was considered small for there.
Okay. Interesting. Now, so you're the only guest I think we've had that has been to more colleges than Al Morganti, I think, but that's a whole different story.
No, I only went to one.
No, I know you looked. I'm just teasing.
I only went to one.
Al actually went to like 15 colleges. That's a whole different story. So you graduate from college, and correct me if I'm wrong. The early stuff is more leaning towards writing, correct? Before you start doing your broadcasting work? Yeah.
So I started writing when I guess that was my freshman year. And then a year later, I got hired by the Trenton Times, which was the greatest thing in the world for me. Right. So I was a writer. I covered high school and I covered college. And then eventually I covered the 92 and 93 Phillies as a young writer just out of college, backing up George King. So I had been in the clubhouse before because I also interned with New Jersey Network and Pat Scanlon. And, Jerry Henry, and his name, he goes by Rock Riley now. He's down in Tampa, but he was another one of the reporters there. Three great guys. And that gave me my first insight into being in a clubhouse. But yes, writing was my dominant part. But I did start to broadcast the college and Jersey football games on the commercial station. Okay. So I would get paid to do those gigs. I get paid $50 to do those.
Yeah, that's the distinction, right? That's a paid gig as opposed to doing it on the college side.
I didn't take one journalism class in college.
Okay.
And I did take a couple of radio classes late, but I broadcast the games for the commercial station. And then they would let me cover it for the paper. So I would double dip. I'd get $50 to broadcast it, and then I would cover it. And whatever I made, I think I made $11 an hour. I had to work 35 hours a week, which was great in college. I mean,
you were living.
I was living. Yeah. I was living high on the hog at that point. But I thought I was going to be a writer. I did. Okay. I really thought I loved it. I loved writing on deadline. I loved the energy of writing on deadline. I loved just the natural high that it gave me. But that was until I put a headset on. And even when I did that, I wasn't sure if I could do it. I mean, you know how it is growing up, Rob.
Yeah.
My dad worked for the phone company. My uncle worked for an IT company. My grandfather was a meat packer. My other grandfather owned his own store. Those were really the only, and I'm from a family of firemen and police officers.
Right.
So those are the only careers.
Blue collar. There's no blueprint for you. Same way.
Which is great. Which is great because it kind of left the path open.
Yeah.
So I didn't really know what I wanted to do. So I'm covering high school and college games for the paper, loving every bit of it. And I go on Mark Narducci's radio show.
It was awesome. Mark was the best. Yeah.
His high school show, talking about, I can't remember what it was. It might have been Legion at the time. And I'm pretty sure it was Tom Bigby, but it was somebody from IP that said, hey, you got a good voice. You should think about doing this for a living. So I've been doing a little bit, and I was like, maybe I'll do that.
Sometimes it only takes that little nudge, Tom, to hear it from somebody. Yeah. Your friends are always going to tell you if they're supportive, hey, you're great. And that's nice, right? You need that, mom and dad, you know what? But if it's somebody from the outside that says something like that to you, kind of say, maybe I can do this.
Well, yes, and doing the high school stuff on WTTM in Trenton, which was a great station, 9:20 a.m. It was an awesome station. So I was doing high school, I was doing college stuff, then I started doing high school stuff. I'd buy the time, sell it, and do the games. And then I did a weekly high school sports show in Mercer County from a restaurant called Chuck's Sports Cafe, the greatest wings in the history of wings. And I'd have guests come in for an hour, like, let's say you and I are doing, you and I have always done. And then the audience would be high school kids. They'd come in and I was like, wow, this is awesome. I'm like performing, but I'm not really performing.
Yeah.
And that was phenomenal to do that. And that sort of, I was bitten.
Right.
The bug was bitten. And I didn't know how to do any of it. The play-by-play was, I think, a little rough. I mean, like anybody would be. I was very nasally. I talked like this. I don't know why that happened.
No diaphragm. Yeah.
There's nothing.
Yeah.
There's nothing up and over. But man, I loved it. But then I was like, can I make a living out of this?
Yeah, like it's nice and all, but can I survive if I want to get married and have kids? Yeah.
Yeah. And so, and Meg and I started dating when we were seniors in college, and not that we were getting married right away, but I'm thinking down the road, can I do this? And I'm piecing it all together, kind of like we've always done.
Yeah.
And then I decided I was going to go back for my master's. So go back to TCNJ for my master's in teaching biology, chemistry, and physics.
You're back with biology. You can't leave it. It's unbelievable
because I had too many credits.
Okay.
So I started going back for my master's. I was 3 classes in, and I had to take a physics class because I didn't take that as an undergraduate.
Right. And you're like, I'm overmatched here. This is
I'm in there, and I'm broadcasting, I'm writing, I'm doing all these things, and I never forget this. It's a physics class as a graduate student, and I did really well on the first exam, and then the second exam I got a 55, and the third exam I got a 47. And I go up to the teacher. I said, "Hey man, I'm lost on this." He goes, "I don't understand why you're lost." He said, "This is basic calculus." I said, "Well, yeah, therein lies the problem." And he goes, "What do you mean?" I said, "I never took calculus." And he looked at me, said, "Well, it was a prerequisite for this class." I said, "Yeah, I just had to take this class for my graduate program because I'm teaching biology, chemistry, and physics." And his eyes go really wide. He goes, "You're in the wrong class, dude." Well, I finished the class. I got a D. It was all I needed.
Yeah.
And long story short, that was like 93. And I decided I was going to try to get a job as a minor league broadcaster doing play-by-play. And that year, it was 92, actually. 92 and 93 totally changed my life.
Right. So let's take it there. So correct me if I'm wrong with the timeline here, Tom. 94 to 99, you start doing Trenton AA, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
Fell in my lap.
Well, but that's a big step up in class from what you were doing.
So in 92, I had purchased the time to do the Babe Ruth World Series in Ewing, New Jersey, and I farmed it out to all these other cities. So I did all these games, and it was really cool. I don't know how it worked, but we worked it out with WTTM. It was also the year that I went to Charleston, South Carolina, and to meet the rest of my wife's family. And I'm writing for the Times, and I'm doing a minor league report every week on local minor league players. Jeff Manto, Eric Young from Rutgers, people like that. And in Charleston, they have a team for the Padres single A, the Charleston Rainbows. And there's a kid from TCNJ, Trenton State College, that I would have played for, and I played against in summer leagues because I was still playing summer ball every year, named Dave Lieback, and he's a South Jersey guy. And I said, I'm going to go down. I'm going to meet my rest of my wife's family before we get married, my fiance, and I'm going to do a story on this guy. But I'm also going to try to see if I can sit in and watch how this guy does the play-by-play for the Charleston Rainbows. And there's no internet. There's nothing at that point. So I just show up one day, and the radio guy's name's Rich Jablonski. And I tell him what I'm doing, and he goes, "Yeah, sure, sit in. You can watch. It's fine." I interview Lee back. I go on the air. He gives me a headset. Then he starts talking to me on the air.
He let you go on the air, not just sit there.
On the air.
Okay.
That's day one. Day two, he lets me do play-by-play.
What?
3 innings of play-by-play of the Charleston Rainbows against the Expos single A affiliate, which had Cliff Floyd, Shane Andrews, not Marquise Grissom, but his brother. And I call a grand slam inside the park home run by Shane Andrews. So
now you have tape.
I'm doing it, and I do another game. He invites me back in August. I come back in August. I do 7 more games. He said to me, he goes, and I'll get to another great part of that story that Matt Breen wrote about a few weeks ago. He invites me back. He says, you're pretty good. He said, you really should go to the winter meetings and try to get a job. And that's what my plan was. So I did all these games down there. I couldn't believe he let me do a full game.
What a nice guy, man.
He's an awesome guy. I still talk to him. I email him every so often at the beginning of a season, thanking him for everything he did for me. And funny thing is, that same year, Tom McGinnis did the same thing. He was a reporter in South Carolina. And
with the same guy?
Same guy. Same guy.
This guy's like the Godfather, man.
He's awesome. He's awesome. He's awesome.
That's incredible.
Yeah. So then, 93 comes, I get married, and all of a sudden I hear that there's this baseball team coming to Trenton from London, Ontario. And I'm planning on going to the winter meetings to try to get a job. And I'm like, boy, this would really be great.
Yeah.
So I interviewed 4 times, and Jody McDonald's father, Joe, longtime executive in Major League Baseball.
Yeah, Mets, Cardinals, Tigers. Yeah. He's
part of this interview process. And it's with Jim Maloney, the owner, Joe Caruso, the owner, and Joe McDonald. And Joe Finley, who's still the owner with Joe Caruso, he's sitting in the background. He's kind of like Jim Maloney's partner. And I hit it off with Joe McDonald. I don't know. I hit it off with him. I don't know why. McDonald, McCarthy, I don't know.
The Irish connection. Yeah.
I don't know. And I get this job as the PR guy. I never done PR before. PR guy, radio broadcaster with Nick Simonetta. He was my partner the first year, friend of mine that we, got to know over the years. And I didn't have to move. It was 5 minutes from where Meg and I lived. And I'm making $26,000 a year. And I have a chance to sell. I never sold before.
Yeah.
Chance to sell to make more. I get hired without the GM knowing. The owners hired me. Had no idea who the GM was. Had no idea who the assistant GM was. Have no idea who the marketing guy is. With four of us, and then a fifth, Todd Pay, was part of the Phillies single A team in Clearwater. None of us know each other. Wayne Hodis, the GM, and Brian Mahoney, the assistant GM, came from Rancho Cucamonga. They wanted to bring their own radio guy.
Wow.
But they had to go with it.
The owner makes the call. Yeah.
Yeah. And honestly, they're 2 of my best friends still to this day.
Wow.
So 94, it's all of us thrown into this whole melting pot of Trenton baseball. And it was honestly the greatest education in the history of education.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because you're doing it all. You're doing it all. Yep. And that always makes you better.
Doing Trenton State football, doing high school basketball. I'm like, man, I got it made. This is awesome.
Yeah. Well, all right. So in looking at it, so you're doing that, obviously you keep them busy, but you also, Tom, start working into the equation, Princeton football and as well as Rutgers. Like, how are you splitting your time with all of this? How were you able to?
So first it was Princeton. I did Princeton football for 5 years. That job again in 94 opened up.
Basketball. So it was almost simultaneous with you doing Trenton. Like the Princeton job. Yeah.
Okay. And it was a different radio station. I applied for it. I had my TCN, my Trenton State stuff, spliced it all together. I still have a bunch of the tapes back here.
Yeah, the reels. Yeah.
Yep. And sent it in. Got the job doing Princeton, Old Palmer Stadium, oldest stadium in the history of stadiums, where you walk up and the seat and the walkway goes like this. It leans up and you have to.
Yeah. It's a little disconcerting. Yeah.
And I did the games at Princeton football with Walt Perez from ABC, 6 ABC.
Walter Perez, who's now with 6 ABC.
Yeah, he was my partner. Walt played football at Duke. He was a 300.
I didn't know that.
He was a 340-pound lineman for Steve Spurrier. He doesn't look like that now. He's just a handsome devil now.
Oh, my God.
He's my partner for football. I get basketball as well. It's Pete Carrill's last year. And that was amazing, too, because they went to the NCAA tournament.
Yeah.
Knocked off UCLA in the first round.
You called that game. Jeez.
It was my first NCAA game.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, first NCAA game.
That's one of the biggest upsets in the history of the tournament.
Yeah, it was incredible. I mean, it was so much fun. It was so much fun.
That's amazing. All right. So you're doing that. You got obviously, well, let's do this, Tom. I want to take a quick time out because
Yeah.
there's a lot going. And then we transition into the Phillies years, Mets for a bit, back to the Phillies, the whole nine. So hang tight real quick. We're going to quick time out with Tom McCarthy, Phillies play-by-play voice on the television side, does an amazing job. Also Westwood One, CBS, calling NFL, college hoops as well. Quick time out here on the Rob Ellis Show. We'll come right back with Tom McCarthy. All right, we're back with Tom McCarthy on the Rob Ellis Show. We appreciate Tom giving us a couple minutes here, and we'll get into present day Phillies. Don't worry in a little bit, folks. But all right, Tom. So take me from obviously you're hustling. You got a lot going on the college side, minor leagues and whatnot. So how does the Phillies gig? So this is 2001 through 5. You get your first stint with the Phillies. How does that come about? And correct me if I'm wrong. At that point, you're doing pre and post radio and some innings here and there. Correct?
Well, yeah. So I'm doing the Thunder, from 94 to 99 full time. And I was actually named the vice president of the Thunder. So I was basically the second man in charge. And the Thunder owners acquired a new minor league team in Lakewood, New Jersey, the Lakewood Blue Claws, now the Jersey Shore Blue Claws. And they asked me if I would go and be the GM there. And I had interviewed for the River Sharks, for the Somerset Patriots, because I wasn't sure still to that point, Rob, what I was going to do, because, I still thought Major League Baseball was there.
Yeah.
But I was starting a family and I thought I've got to get this foundation before I think about me. I got to think about them. I mean, you know how it is. I mean, we go through that all the time.
Absolutely.
So I was offered a chance I was a finalist for a job, a Major League Baseball job. My wife didn't want to move. I didn't take that. I was a finalist for an NBA job. And I didn't take that because she didn't want to move. And that was fine because we had a young family. And I also had been offered a bunch of AAA jobs, but I figured why go to AAA in Charlotte, North Carolina, when I can be in Trenton between New York and Philadelphia and have all these other things like Princeton football and then eventually Rutgers football. So in 1999, I'm asked if I would be the president or the general manager of the Lakewood Blue Claws. So I'd have to leave the Thunder, but I'd also have to give up all the broadcasting. And to me, that was a pretty good salary for a family at the time. And I said yes.
Okay.
So I was going to, I don't know if you remember John Anderson, who was a really good director for CN8.
I do remember John.
Yeah. So
I worked with John. Yeah.
Yeah. So I had been doing games for the Thunder, and I've been doing some football, some college games on CN8. And John said to me one day, and I'll never forget this. He said, "What are you going to do in the future?" And I said, "Well, I'm hoping to broadcast big league baseball." And he goes, "But nobody knows what you are." And I said, "Well, what do you mean?" He said, "You're the assistant GM of the baseball team, vice president." He said, "And that's taken a lot of your time. So everybody that would want to hire you thinks, well, why are we going to hire this guy if he's thinking he's a businessman and not a broadcaster?" And I never really thought about that.
Right.
And one of my good friends, Brian Mahoney, who was with the Phillies for a long time, but was the assistant GM who I took over for, he went to Norwich. His dad, Kevin, his father ran the Red Sox for a number of years. Oh. And around that same time, he sat me down outside Waterfront Park and he said, "Listen, I want you to know you are right now a big league broadcaster." And he said, you just need a break. Your voice, the way you deal with people, all these things. So all these things are running through my mind. And I had agreed to be the GM of the Blue Claws, and I'm driving to go sign the contract. And I just had some kind of an epiphany that said, I don't want to worry about whether the hot dogs are cooked, whether the soda's flat, whether a family of 4 can bring water into the stadium. I want to broadcast games, man. What am I doing?
Mm-hmm.
So my partner at the time was Andy Freed, who's the Tampa Bay Rays broadcaster.
Yeah.
I hired him in 1995 after Nick Simonetta left. And that night, I'm in the bathroom fixing a toilet at the ballpark when I hear him say, we go to the top of the fourth inning. Tom McCarthy's supposed to be here doing play-by-play, and I have no idea where he is.
Oh, my God.
And he said it funny. He said it in a funny way because we were that way.
Yeah.
And I turned around. I got sweat dripping everywhere, and I'm like, and I cursed. I went, Mother.
Yeah.
Andy,
what am I doing?
I'm fixing the toilet in the bathroom. And I'm like, what am I doing?
Yeah.
So I drive to go sign the contract to do the Blue Claws. And I had this epiphany where I was like, you know what? I don't want to do this. I don't want to run a team. I called Joe Finley, who was the owner at the time with Joe Caruso. And he was so happy that I said it because he didn't want me to give up the broadcasting. So in doing that, I thought, all right, I got to focus on broadcasting.
Yeah.
So at the end of that year, I resigned as the assistant GM, stayed as the broadcaster, but as the number 2.
Okay.
And started a radio show on ESPN Radio in Philadelphia, 1680, my own show called the Tom McCarthy Show, I guess appropriately named.
Yeah.
And that was awesome. I did a 3-hour show every day on this ESPN affiliate that was part of Nassau Broadcasting in Princeton, but they were considered the Philly affiliate. And man, that was unbelievable. And then Scott Graham was starting to migrate into doing play-by-play for the Phillies.
Right.
And they needed somebody to do the pre and post. And Scott suggested my name to Rory McNeil, our director of broadcasting. I had no idea about this. And Rory called me and asked if I would come in 2000 in September to try out to do the pre and post game show. So I got, I think it was 3 or 4 gigs to try out. And one of those nights, the Emmy Awards were going on in Philadelphia.
Okay.
And I filled in for Scott while he and Harry and those guys went to the Emmy Awards. And Andy Mustard did radio with Wheels, and I can't remember who else. Somebody else came in to do
maybe
radio.
LA at that point. I don't know.
He could have been LA. He could have come back and forth from TV. I don't remember. Yeah. So I'm doing the pre and post game show, and I'm doing the post game show in September, and I'm doing it, and going through everything, and I can feel somebody behind me, and I'm looking, and it's Rory, and he's got this kind of stern look on his face. I'm like, oh man, what did I say? Well, I'm doing it.
Yeah.
And he said to me, I went to a break. I said, hey, Rory, what's up? He goes, the Emmy Awards were tonight. And I said, yeah. I said, I realized that. He goes, why didn't you tell me you were up for one? And I said, well, it was a group thing. I said, but honestly, Rory, I said, I wasn't going to win it. I want this job.
Yeah.
And he goes, yeah, well, you want it. And I was like, what? He goes, yeah, you guys want it. So I honestly think that's how I got the Phillies.
That helped you. It couldn't hurt you.
I think it did. I think it really. So, 2001, I'm doing the pre and post. No play-by-play, 2001.
Just pre and post. I want to go back to 2 things that you just mentioned. I don't want to just gloss over these. So one, that takes a lot of guts to not sign that contract and decide, you know what, I'm going all in on the broadcast. It does. It takes guts, Tom, because when you have a family, you have to make, as you mentioned, there's a couple of gigs you turned down. You got to make some sacrifices sometimes. And you're always thinking like security and all this other stuff, especially in this business where there's no security. It's very hard. But the other part, the fact that you've had people in your life sit you down and be like, listen, man, you need to do this. Like this is what you're destined to do. Some people don't get that. And then they end up going down the path they probably shouldn't go down. So that it's enormous that somebody had to, because it's a hard conversation. Sometimes it's awkward at times.
No doubt. It's funny because every time I started to teeter, to the left or the right, somebody put me back in the middle. And I don't know why. I have no idea why. Mm-hmm. But I do remember, Meg doesn't remember this story as vividly as I do, but I do, is that I called her to tell her, I didn't even discuss it with her. She had known that I was wavering a little bit, but I said, hey, I'm not going to take the Blue Claws job. And she said, and she doesn't remember this, but she was a mom of 2 toddlers at the time.
Right.
She said to me, she goes, I don't really care what you do, but we need milk. And I'm like,
there's perspective on life.
I'll get milk. I'll bring it home before the game tonight. Whatever it was.
It's great.
Because I had Patrick was, I think, 3 and Tommy was 1. No, Patrick was 4. Tommy was 2. We hadn't had Maggie yet or Kerry. So I was like, all right. But yeah, she was all in. She was worried. I will say this. When I stopped working at the Thunder, did the radio show, because the Thunder actually had Wayne Hodis left to go to the New Orleans Saints at one point, and they were thinking about asking me to come back to be the GM, and she wanted me to take it. And I probably would have taken it. I probably would have.
Right.
And then all of a sudden something happened where I think I got the Phillies gig. I think that's what it was. And
oh man. All right. So you do your first stint there with the Phils, and you're
it was great.
Your foot's in the door. That in and of itself, whatever it is, you're there at least.
Yep.
Okay. So that's from 01 to 05. And then, ironically enough, as you talked about from your childhood, Mets radio opens up and that opportunity. So you make the move to go to FAN, correct? Is that who was carrying the Mets games at the time?
Yeah, that's who was carrying it. So I had interviewed in 03 when Gary Cohen asked me to interview because there was an opening as his partner.
Right.
And it was me and Howie Rose were the finalists. And ironic.
Good company. Yeah.
And I mean, Howie obviously deserved to get it, and he got it.
Yeah.
And that was great. But then when Gary moved over to TV 2 years later, Howie called me and said, "I want you to be my partner." And at that time, I was doing 2 innings of play-by-play with the Phillies, which was great.
Right.
But the Mets offered me the full game, and it was the Mets at the time. I was like, wow, this is a team I grew up rooting for, even though I've been so attached to the Phillies, and I really was attached to them. I said, I got to do this.
Yeah.
And went there 06, 07, made the playoffs in 06, just missed getting to the World Series. But it's funny, part of it there, we were going to move and look for a house up in North Jersey or Long Island.
A little less of a commute for you.
Yeah, but Patrick's Little League team had won the sectional championship for the 11-year-olds, and he wanted to stay and defend his title as a 12-year-old. So I said, all right, well, we'll stay for a year.
Right.
And then a year turned into 2. And then middle of my contract is when the Phillies asked for permission to talk to me about TV. So it was,
all right.
It's weird, man. I don't know why we didn't.
It's all kind of working out here, Tom. That's for sure. And then ironically enough, so anyway, the Mets were good with letting you out, or did you have an out? Was that a pain in the butt? How did that work?
I actually said no to David Montgomery like three occasions. So when I left, we had like a 3-hour lunch.
Okay.
What's that barbecue place that was over on Delaware Avenue? I don't know if it's still there. It's a known barbecue place.
Okay.
Is it Dave's? No, I don't remember.
It might be Dave's. Yeah.
That's where we were. It was me and David Montgomery having a barbecue for 3 hours.
Yeah.
And he said, I'm going to get you back. And I said, David, I appreciate it. I said, but you know what? I appreciate everything you gave me. Yeah. I said, this is a good spot for me to get better and all this other stuff. I said, all the right. He goes, that's cool, but I'm going to get you back. And I said, okay.
Hey, so but at least it was good terms. Like, I
signed a 3-year deal with the Mets with like a 2-year option.
Yeah.
And I'm in the middle of it when David asked if I would come back to start doing TV because they needed somebody to replace Harry when he retired 10 years down the road, but he wanted to have somebody in set. And so did NBC or Comcast at the time.
Also give Harry a break he didn't have to do the full.
Give him a break. Yeah. Give him a break. And I said no like 3 times. I'm such an idiot.
Yeah.
Because I felt bad leaving in the middle of a contract.
Right.
And finally, Gary Cohen and Howie Rose and my bosses at FAN said, hey, man,
are you nuts?
We can give you as many years as you want, but we cannot match the money.
Yeah.
And you know what? In reality, my heart was with the Phillies as much as I grew up a Mets
at that
fan.
point. Yeah.
I hate to say it, but at that point, I had lost my fandom for the Mets.
Yeah.
I enjoyed it. I loved my partners. I loved the booth. It was the greatest booth in the history of booths, at least up to that point. And yeah, it was good. It turned out to be the right decision. He called Meg at one point and said, hey, I really need him to take this.
Really? That's awesome.
She didn't really want me to go at the beginning. She hated change, even though she never really balked at it.
Right.
But yeah, so it worked out.
And the good thing is you were still, living in your same spot. You didn't have to move.
I'm still in the same house I was in when I was in minor league baseball.
It's perfect. It's perfect. Yeah. So again, timing is unbelievable. You come back in 08.
Yeah.
I mean, it couldn't have been better. And you go on that magical run, World Series, the whole 9. And the next year, Tom, and this is where, this is a tough spot. Okay. And I know how tight you were with Harry, and he was as beloved a figure. He's the only voice I ever knew for Phillies baseball. That's all I ever knew, right? Growing up in this area. Legend. He was just, for everybody in this city, and you know this, I'm not telling you anything you didn't know. He was the guy, right?
No doubt. No doubt.
And for people who may not remember, in 09, it was very sad. He passed in the booth before a game in, correct me if I'm wrong, a day game in Washington, correct?
It was crushing. Yes, it was opening day for Washington, at home opener for Washington. It was
Tom,
crushing.
we're in the newsroom at what was then, I think, Comcast Sportsnet still, and then it became NBC Sports Philadelphia. And we got word that he had fallen ill. We didn't know quite yet what was going on. And I mean, and you have to work, in those situations in news, you have to start putting things together and figure things out. I felt sick to my stomach. Like, honest to God, it was just horrible. I can't even imagine what it was like for you guys.
It was the hardest day we've ever had as broadcasters. Mm-hmm. And I think back to it now. I mean, I was really feeling my way through the transition from radio to TV. And in some ways, this is somewhat selfish. I was thinking about what people would think my whole first year.
Yep.
Because I came back from the Mets. People didn't really like the fact I was at the Mets. I was, even though reality-wise, this was a better opportunity career-wise, so you embrace it, and everybody would. So that day, I remember Harry asked me, he said, hey, because Ryan Howard, I think, was nicked up, and he may have gotten scratched at some point.
Okay.
And Harry said, hey, T-Mac, and he wasn't feeling good the days leading up to that. We knew he wasn't feeling good, so we were keeping a real close eye on him, as was Scott Sheridan, our athletic trainer. He said, can you let me know if Howard is scratched? I'm going to go upstairs. I said, yep, Harry, I'll let you know as soon as I hear. That's the last I said anything to him. He went upstairs, and about 25 minutes later, we received word that he had collapsed while sitting in his chair in the broadcast booth. And he was not conscious and did not have a pulse. Rob Brooks, God bless him, tried to resuscitate him. The paramedics got up there. At that point, he had basically passed in the booth. He
was already gone. Yeah.
They had a faint, I guess they had something faint that they tried to revitalize. Mm-hmm. So we find out about, I guess, a total about an hour and 15 minutes later that he had passed at the hospital officially on the way. Mm. And the president of the time for the Nationals was Stan
Kasten.
Yeah. Stan Kasten said to David, we can cancel the game.
Yep.
David said, I remember we were in the storage room in the clubhouse, and David said, Harry would not want us to cancel this game.
Wow.
So we went on.
That's a tough call.
Oh, my God, it was a tough call.
Jeez.
But we went on, and we told everybody in the open what had happened, because not many people had known at that point, because we had to contact the families, and the families were contacted at that point.
Yeah.
And I remember doing the open with Wheels and Sarge, and, contrary to what people think, Chris Wheeler and Harry Callis and Richie Ashburn were extremely close friends for a long time.
Yep.
Running mates, as they used to say.
Yes. Yep.
And,
on the road. Yep.
I turned, and Wheels he had tears in his eyes, and he did his best to say whatever. I don't remember what he said that day. And then I turned to Sarge, and Sarge had just lost his mom. And I see the tear coming down his cheek, and I'm like, okay. So we get through the open. Mm-hmm. And I remember this vividly. I said, okay, everybody needs me to be straight.
Just call the game. Yeah, they're going to be emotional. I got to just try straight through the,
Do not cry.
Yep.
Much as I wanted to, do not cry.
Yeah.
And to this day, I think that was a mistake. I think I should have just done whatever I felt. And you know what? Every F inning, I fought it. But my perception was people didn't want to hear me cry.
Yeah.
See me cry. And I was like, I got to be strong. I got to be professional.
Yeah.
We get through that game, and we were supposed to go see the president the next day. Obviously, that was canceled. That's why Harry didn't want to get off the trip and get checked out or anything like that, because he wanted to go see the president.
Yeah.
And, obviously, funeral and everything like that was. Whew.
I wouldn't second guess yourself, Tom. You were in as tough a spot as any broadcaster could probably ever be in. Okay. So I wouldn't second guess yourself. I thought you did a hell of a job.
Yeah, I will say, I appreciate it. I will say, I mean, I'm 55 now. I was 40 at the time. I was just getting rolling.
Yep.
55 would have told 40, first of all, just do what you think.
Be you. Be yourself.
Not what you think everybody else thinks you should do. It's it's your job. I mean, So anyway, so then I take over doing the play-by-play the whole year, and that was the plan, but it wasn't for like 10 years down the road. And it was the toughest day. Those 2 weeks were tough.
I was going to say, even that the whole year had to be hard. I mean,
whole year was hard.
Yeah,
but man, you got to do the World Series, and gosh, golly, I'm so happy that he was able to do the World Series.
And looking back now, thank God he got 08. You know what I mean? Like he had gone through a lot of lean years other
Absolutely.
than 93. It was a lot of lean years, and it's fitting that he got that. So that is very, very cool. All right. Last one. I'm taking up a lot of your time, but I do want to get into present day and your NFL and college hoops broadcasting as well. So we'll get a quick one in here, Tom, and then we'll get you out of here in a couple minutes.
Yeah, no problem.
Appreciate it. All right, quick time out here on the Rob Ellis Show. We'll continue with Tom McCarthy. We'll look at the ensuing Philly years, present day, college hoops, like I said, and NFL as well. Right back.
Hey Birds fans, the NFL schedule has arrived and Philly Sports Trips has all the details now. Visit the site phillysportstrips.com. This is sure to be an epic season. Be sure to go there now to make sure that you don't get shut out. Join us in Tampa, LA, Seattle, or when we get revenge in Kansas City. Don't want to fly? No problem. Gather up your crew and hop aboard one of our signature boisterous bus trips to DC or New York. Sign up now and make sure to mention A2D. Don't miss out on the best Philly fan experience anywhere. Philly Sports Trip customers always stay at the best hotels and meet NFL legends. Book today.
All right, we're back with Tom McCarthy on the Rob Ellis Show, A2D Radio. All right, T-Mac, so now we're, some great run there. 08 through 11 was just unbelievable. I mean, wow, what fun that was. And it was so cool because it was very homegrown with Utley Rollins and Howard and Hamels and Madsen and all those kind of guys. Charlie. I mean, that had to be, obviously you had what happened with Harry was just traumatic, but they were, man, what a run to get back to the Phillies family. And then all of a sudden you feel like this is going to be every year, man. We're in the playoffs and the World Series every year. It's
funny. I'm wearing reading glasses now. And the two things that I used to do, I used to make fun of Wheels about reading glasses. And I used to say to him, man, this is great. We're going to do this every year. And he looked at me and goes, this doesn't happen every year. So to be able to have that was a gift. It was so much fun. Those guys, those core groups, to grow up with those core guys, Utley, Rollins, Howard, Victorino, Hamels, all those guys, to get Roy Halladay, to get Cliff Lee. I mean, I think the stunning part was when we lost to the Yankees. I didn't think we'd lose to the Yankees. And to not get back after that was even more surprising. But I think it made me even more grateful for last year because of the way we did it and how appreciative I am for playoff baseball.
That's awesome. So you get back last year and man, because it was so unexpected, Tom. I mean, they get on that run. It's rare that you have the managerial firing and everything kind of works out and you get on that run. But man, all of a sudden, what was it like? That sort of that first game, was it just, man, I'm back. We're back. This is crazy.
It's funny because back in July, my boss at the Phillies said, you can do your football package. So I was actually in Athens, Georgia for game 1 of the Cardinals series.
Oh, right.
And he busted my chops. He called me and said, hey, are you here? And I said, well, by here, what do you need? And he goes, it's St. Louis. And I was like, no, I'm in Athens, Georgia. And he goes, what? And I'm like, I was told I wasn't
that I'm good.
Radio.
Yep.
And he was just busting my chops. But So I watched it. So it's game 2. I'm done with the football game and I'm flying to St. Louis for game 3.
Yeah.
Leaving Atlanta. I get to the gate and we're winning. I think it was 2-0 at the time. Nola was
tight.
Dealing.
Yeah, it was tight.
And I'm like, you know what? I'm not going. And I got up from the gate. It was the 6th inning, 7th inning. And I left. And I went to the team hotel in Atlanta. And
whoa.
I watched the rest of it there. And I took a chance. But I was like, you know what? I'm not going.
It would have been bad karma to hop on that plane.
It would have been bad karma. And I would have landed, had a few beers, and then took off again.
That's awesome.
That's awesome. I just had a few beers there.
There you go. All right. That all worked out. So last year's unbelievable. But the other thing is, Tom, like along the way, and correct me if I'm wrong, you were also doing St. Joe's games during the Jameer run, correct?
I was. I did Jameer, Delonte, the Elite 8 team. In fact, we're having a reunion this year for that team. Yeah, I've had some really good teams. I mean, those Princeton teams were amazing. The only teams that weren't good were Greg Schiano's first 4 years at Rutgers football. But
he got it together.
Figured it out a little bit. But I've been really lucky with some of these games I've been able to do.
All right. So while you're doing the Phillies, you're also doing college hoops, at a high level, Westwood One, CBS. You're also doing NFL, Westwood One, CBS as well. talk to me about the juggling act. And I know they're not all coinciding at the same time. I get that. But just, being able to sort of, compartmentalize the way that you have to when you're doing those kind of things.
Well, I think the biggest thing that I tell people is that one helps the other. There's no doubt, because there's different preparations that go into it, different interviews that go into it, different styles that go into it. And I can use some of that for every other sport I do. So it's more time management during the baseball season and then during spring training. But I love it. I mean, if my mind wasn't focused on doing something, then quite frankly, my mind would be focused on eating or getting out of shape. And I can do that with the best of them. I go up and down like a roller coaster. But I got to keep busy.
Busy's good.
My kids are all older now. I mean, they're around, but Tommy's playing in Winnipeg. Patrick's broadcasting. My one daughter's a teacher. My other one's in college. And she's a track athlete. So as long as I get to see her, I'm good. Because Meg's teaching too. So sometimes it's me and the dogs. I mean, the puppy is barking like crazy upstairs at something. I have no idea what it is, but that's my day usually in the off season. So when I have football or basketball to get ready for, it kind of keeps me grounded a little
I'm
bit.
the same way. I idle time for me is never good. I just get in my own head. It's not good.
I built a field hockey cage when I had downtime. I built a wall for the kids to throw against if they were doing anything. I've done so much crazy stuff when I have downtime that sometimes Meg will come home. She'll go, "Oh boy,
what now?"
Yeah. The wall at the foot of the driveway is one of my favorite things that I ever did.
That's awesome. You get out there yourself sometimes. All right. So you mentioned your two of your sons, and I want to start with Patrick, who is now following in your footsteps as one of the voices of the Mets. Which, I mean, I know you guys did a couple games last year too, and I think he filled in for you a little bit when you maybe had some other stuff going on, and he did an amazing job. First of all, but I mean, what a thrill that's got to be as a dad. It's incredible, and he's still very young too.
He's 28 and he's just evolving. I mean, he's really good. He's a good kid. He works hard, former college athlete. So I think that helps a little bit in the competitive part of it, and getting better part of it. I think that, and same thing for you with your kids, I think what we do for a living has given them generational dreams. They know they can do whatever they want. And people talk about the input that I have had for him to get these jobs, and beyond my name and maybe my friendships with some people because they know him. There's been nothing but his ability to get these positions. So I love it that he's able to do it, because my one daughter's a teacher. So she relies on Meg for teaching advice. Meg's a teacher. And then Patrick relies on me. And it's kind of neat that we're able to pass on that sort of inspiration to everybody in the family to do what they want to do. That's awesome. That is awesome. All right, let's talk a little present day, Tom. We're coming off, as you and I are having this conversation, off a tough one on Monday to the Orioles. I thought toughest loss of the year, by the way. Yeah, me too, because there's so many weird circumstances and things you could second guess and opportunities maybe blown. You're right. And there's been a few of those in the regular season, but that one's right there at the very top. I don't disagree with you one bit. In a weird game for Turner, in which has been, frankly, not kind of a nightmare, for his debut here at the Phillies. What's your sense here of just where things are headed? Because they're in an incredibly tight wild card race. This is, and I think it's coming down to the wire here at the end of the season too. I would agree with that. Yeah, and we're creeping up on the trade deadline too. There's a lot of decisions to be made. Well, I'd be surprised if they made a major move, quite frankly, because as Rob Thompson said the other day, and I agree with him, if the top five don't hit, then what's the sense in giving up a prospect for somebody? Yeah, these guys got to hit. They'll probably make a move or two, but I people that talk about Shohei Ohtani or Soto, Arenado, Goldschmidt. I actually see Arenado, Goldschmidt more than I see the other two. Yeah, that's just me. I mean, I see that more as a possibility than the other two, only because of the depth that they have. Like, let's say if they get Goldschmidt, well, they can put Schwarber back in left and have Harper DH until Harper can play the outfield. If they get Arenado, then they could put Bohm at first base and do the same kind of thing and sort of, maneuver around the DH a little bit. Now, I'm not saying it's going to happen, but
Right.
I'd be surprised if something big like that happens. But I think it's going to come down to the wire. I think we're okay. If Christopher Sanchez pitches like he did against the Orioles, then, I'm not saying that they don't go out and get a number 5 starter, but listen, he's been good. He just hasn't got any support.
Yep.
But they got to figure it out. They do. I mean, I know it's easier said than done, but, Trey Turner's obviously, he's got some stuff that he's dealing with.
Yeah.
He's fighting. And, maybe we still wait for that run. I know it's hard to be patient with it, but I still think they're okay. But I do think it's dicey. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah, I think 5-6, something like that since the All-Star break. So anyway, Tom, a couple odds and ends too. It's been fascinating